Great! Plan B! This is for everyone you've killed! England murderer!
Hold your fire! This man isn't Green Hill. And he's not black.
What?
Sonic, like any other franchise, has iconic staples that define a series in pop culture. The everlasting gold ring, the mysterious chaos emeralds, the loops, the springs, the gun violence, it's all there. But one of the most memorable parts of Sonic's iconography has got to do with the stages. To show you what I mean, open up Sonic 1, go past the title screen, and you can't tell it on my face, but I've never been more disgusted. Grass levels have been in Sonic for decades, for better and for worse, and most of the time the answer is worse. It's mostly worse. From the iconic first level of the original game to the many clones that follow after, to the abandoned kingdoms and forests that make me question the internal logic of Sonic's Animal Kingdom, I'm your local idiot hipster, and watch as I go rank every single grass level in Sonic the Hedgehog. Now before we delve into the video proper, let's go through some ground rules to make sure everybody in the audience is up to speed. First off, mainline games only, for the sake of not burning myself out making a video that's 17 gosh darn hours long. Secondly, and this is the biggest rule, I will only be ranking a stage in its original appearance, meaning I will not cover any levels that reuse a level theme seen previously. This is to avoid having to cover the endless supply of Green Hill levels that plague the series, so for the sake of my sanity, I will be covering how a level was in its first original state. Thirdly, I will only cover the levels Sonic the Hedgehog goes through. So in games with multiple characters, I will only cover levels the Blue Rat goes through. And finally, I will rank levels off of 3 categories: aesthetics, level design, and original mechanics. And in the end, I will give a general ranking from a D rank, being the lowest, to an X rank, being the highest. So wasting no more time, let's get into this ranking with the first grass level, Green Hill Zone. Ah yes, Green Hill. Everybody's favorite vandalism charge. As the first level in the new Sonic game, it had a lot on its shoulders. This was people's first impression to an all-new series set to rival the gaming King Mario, so it needed to make a good first impression. So, did it? Why do you think they keep bringing it back? Let's begin with the level's aesthetics, and it's obvious as to why this stage has become a staple of gaming culture. This was the first massive mascot release on 16-bit hardware, even before Mario World dropped on the Super Nintendo, so it was on Sonic Team to pump out every color and all detail it could out of the Genesis, and their labor clearly shows. I know it might have been hard to understand from how overused it is, but you need to understand how next level this is in comparison to other platforms at the time. The world just feels so alive. Colors are super vibrant but aren't oversaturated and are contrasted well. The detail between the foreground and the background is excellently highlighted with both the natural greenery and cascading waterfalls. Trees, foliage, and level pieces like the loops are meticulously detailed to give a faux 3D effect, with the brown checkerboard patterns contrasting beautifully with the natural greenery. It's nearly aesthetically perfect while still being distant from other games by still feeling realistic. Everything, while surreal and whimsical, still has a realistic feeling of depth, what made it feel special for Mario with its overtly cartoony nature. And what hasn't been said about this level's music? Its melody is incredibly memorable and detailed, which is crazy coming out of the Genesis' notoriously grungy and harsh sound chip, adding to the memorability of the stage. If it wasn't obvious before, Green Hill gets the easiest S rank in terms of aesthetics, and is the gold standard for Sonic's visual identity. Just please, Sega, stop reusing it! But the aesthetics can only take you so far if the level itself isn't solid, and for a first level in a brand new series, it teaches you everything you need to know masterfully, without explaining a single thing to the player directly. It teaches you the basics of your moveset, the momentum system, ring collecting, and the general trifecta of Sonic level design. The top paths being the fastest with the most goodies, but they require the most skill to reach, with the lower paths being the easiest to get to but had the most challenges involved. Another S tier. But now we come to this level's only drawback, is that in comparison to every other Sonic stage we'll be discussing, there's really no original mechanics here. And admittedly, the goal of this level is to set up and introduce the staples of Sonic with the loops, platforms, rings, and such, but I really wish they went out of their way to add more stuff Green Hill exclusive. But it still gets an A for following all the Sonic tropes we have. So in total, Green Hill's an S-tier grass stage and overall an S-tier stage in general, and it sucks to see how all of its magic's been torn down by the endless nostalgia catching the stage has seen, but still, it has my respect. Alright, our next pick is...
Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
The first stage of Sonic 2 is literally just Green Hill. But wait guys, the checkerboards are orange now. That means it's completely different. In terms of aesthetics, this is just doing what Green Hill did with almost zero original ideas or concepts. Greenery all around with a large body of water surrounding it, checkerboard dirt, loops, waterfalls, it's all here. So it's getting a C tier. I'm saving it from the D tier only because it still looks pretty. In terms of level design, imagine Green Hill but they flattened it to the ground. Emerald Hill is remarkably more linear than its predecessor, with only really 2 pathways to choose from and very rare points in the level where you feel considerably high above ground. That's not too much of a bad thing, as there's still exploration for signposts to collect the emeralds, and the level is overall much more consistent than its spiritual older brother. So I'll give it an A, but it's not reaching the highs of Green Hill. And for mechanics, I guess you can get all the emeralds in this zone if you're good enough. D tier. Overall, Emerald Hill lands firmly in the C tier, and is a sign that you should always change the homework you're copying. For the longest time, I never considered Hilltop a grass level. If you couldn't tell, I'm kinda stupid. Getting into the aesthetics, this is far more original than Emerald Hill, being set high in the mountains above the clouds, having to use gondolas and seesaws to move up and down the stage, with pine trees all around and caverns with lava. Overall, I'd give it an S tier by far. My only issue is that most of the assets are recolored from Emerald Hill. You can't hide from me, grass. The actual level is pretty good. Not great or really that memorable, but it's a pretty good zone. Having to move up and down the level with the gondolas is pretty slow, but if you're a daredevil, you could just avoid them and pray you don't die. The set pieces in this level are actually pretty good, with the cavern collapsing in on itself and you needing to platform as much as you can or else you get crushed. So overall, it's an A tier level. Finally, we go over to the mechanics, and we actually have some originality with the seesaws and gondolas, which are fine. I don't care for any of them because they make you really slow, so they both get a B. So in the end, Hilltop scores an A rank overall. A pretty neat yet forgettable level. Palmtree Panic is just Green Hill, but Professor Utonium accidentally added in a third ingredient to the concoction. Trash. Palmtree Panic is the first level in Sonic CD. I'm sorry. And in terms of a first level, it at least introduces everything you need to know about the game you're getting into. In terms of aesthetics, I legitimately might have this be the highest rank so far. It takes elements from Green Hill, but unlike Emerald Hill, it actually adds to it. Everything has so much more detail, the foliage is so much more textured, and the water looks freaking drinkable, it's crazy. I love the cavernous waterfalls in the background, the berries in the trees, and the music. Both regional versions of the track slap so hard, and that's only the present version. CD has 3 other visual versions of the level, being in the past and the good and the bad futures. The past looks so rustic compared to the present. The rock formations are still developing, the grass new and still growing, and the music sounds simpler, giving a nostalgic feeling. The good future feels like the present version, but dialed up to 11, with brighter visuals, extra detail, and even more cheery music. While the bad future looks nightmarish, dystopian, and gray, the music being darker and not cheery at all. The aesthetics of this level get a perfect X rank. The level design, however, this is by far the most fun CD level, which isn't a high bar because CD isn't fun. The level lacks a lot of the BS levels that our preceding have, but that doesn't mean it's free of CD-isms. The level is still very horizontal, with barely any points where you can just coast and not get interrupted by some spring or rock platform that halts your intended flow in half. The platforming in general is just really bizarre. Nothing feels like it makes sense in the game, and more often than not, it either doesn't let you keep your speed or leads you to nothing. The only thing of note to look for are the generators, which are pretty easy to spot in this stage, but on the other hand, they don't mean very much where you can just collect the time stones to get the good ending with half the work. Overall, it gets a C rank. As is the trend currently, this level has barely any original mechanics to its name, which in this case is a double-edged sword considering most of this game's level mechanics suck. So we'll give it a C only because lacking them sorta makes the level better in retrospect. In short, Palmtree Panic ends up on the C tier, like the rest of Sonic CD. Sue me if you want CD fans. Finally, I get to discuss a good game. Sonic 3 is peak, Kino, hype moments, and aura, whatever you want to call it. And Angel Island is a perfect example of why this game is the gold standard of 2D Sonic. First off, aesthetics, and it comes swinging in with an actual cutscene of Sonic aura farming with his super form, entering the island, having a good time, but then BLAM! Knuckles comes out of nowhere, beats the emeralds out of you, steals them, laughs at you, and just leaves. Immediately, this game sets up your location, your protagonist, your antagonist, and your goal without without saying a single word. Chef's kiss. For the actual graphics, it's a notable step up from every game that came before it in terms of art direction. No longer are we just doing Green Hill but orange or Back to the Future. Now we have this luscious jungle setting that gives the same type of introductory vibe as the previous stages, but actually puts some effort into originality. It's visually striking, with there being a clearly defined upper and lower region of the jungle, both having their own clear-cut differences with the sky covered up with the leaves and vines below, and the OST as well giving the naturalistic vibe with the drums and snare. It leaves a great first impression. Oh, I guess we're being cut off by the mini-boss. I wonder what it's gonna do. What the fuck? Yeah, in the ultimate power move, Eggman sets the entire level on fire and it stays on fire for the rest of the stage. This truly gives off a cinematic and bold feeling we haven't seen before in any of the previous levels. Yeah, CD had the time travel, but we haven't seen a stage have this drastic of a change in the middle of the level completely out the blue. X tier, I gotta say nothing more. And in terms of level design, it retains the same level of quality. It feels like they took every previous level and molded its best elements into one game. This level has some really compelling platforming, especially in the upper roots that give you one-ups or the elemental shields, exploration with how big and wide the level is to find ring portals to go to special stages, and of course, the level is chock full of speedy moments where you can just go fast, but not to the point where it feels automated. Another X rank. And finally, the level actually has original fun mechanics that are exclusive to this level. Breakable rocks, vines you can swing on, disappearing platforms, all implemented and actually fun. So we're giving this an S tier, only because I feel it could have done a little bit more. Angel Island is our first X tier placement, setting the example for the next couple levels, and our next level is our first 3D stage, being Emerald Coast. Hey guys, it's Hipster from the far future of a day after I recorded this video, and during editing it just occurred to me that I completely forgot about Marble Garden and Mushroom Hill. Oops. Marble Garden is a C tier level. While I think the music is nice, the level's overall visual style doesn't appeal to me with the really boring colors, and the level design is either mostly boring or annoying. And don't even get me started on that spinning top, I hate that spinning top. Mushroom Hill, however, is A tier. I love how it looks visually, and especially in Act 2 where the seasons change and the color palette follows suit. The music is also a solid bop. The level feels super wide open yet harder than your usual opening stage in a good way, and unlike Angel Island, you can find all the big rings in the zone if you're clever. With mechanics, I like the mushrooms and less for the poles you have to slowly go up and down with. Bummer. Being the first proper showcase of Sonic leaping into the third dimension, it falls into the same place Green Hill and Sonic 1 did, having to prove whether Sonic truly made the transition smoothly. And unlike your local gaming journalist, I don't think it was that rough in the slightest. In terms of aesthetics, it's a really good looking level. Unlike the Genesis days where they could go all out with the ease of sprite art, they had to restrict themselves to early 3D graphics. Still, for a game from 1998, it looks above the standard, the art direction keeping it from aging like milk. Models and textures are remarkably solid, environments blend in both cartooniness but with a much greater focus on realism than before. It looks like a place you'd find in real life, only without the loops and the killer whales. Speaking of the latter, the spectacle is on full display in this game, and for this level we have the iconic whale chase where you escape a giant whale tearing up the boardwalk as the camera shifts to an in-front view to give you as much adrenaline as possible. The music is also equally iconic, with an upbeat, energetic guitar yet still giving that peaceful, lazy Sunday feeling. My only issue is that it could have looked so much better if it was lit well. Speed Highway does a good job being well lit to fit with a Night Funk City theme. Also, it's barely a grass level, more so a beach one, so it's getting a B rank, for lighting, lack of greenery, and for still being pretty dated at the end of the day. For the actual level, it's both a good and a bad start, but that's really depending on how you look at Adventure's level design. The level is slightly wide open, but it's pretty linear, there really only being one way to the goal, and unlike its sequel or even the Boost games, it's not even that interesting of a straight line. There are shortcuts and bits of the level that feel fun to speedrun, but at the end of the day, it's not that interesting. There's also a very heavy focus on automation, which isn't a bad thing if you balance it with fun challenges and platforming, but here the platforming is very uninteresting. I understand why it was designed like this. This is your first 3D level in your first 3D game, you gotta make it easy to understand for new players. But in comparison to levels like Twinkle Park, Speed Highway, and Red Mountain, I don't see why you would come back to this one. B. And as for mechanics, there's nothing. At most it has a little bit of water which you don't interact with anywhere else. I guess you can count the whale chase. Besides that, everything else here is seen later on. C tier. Emerald Coast lands firmly in the B tier. A good start to 3D, but weak overall. Sonic Adventure 2 is a big improvement from Sonic Adventure 1, and that goes for the levels themselves. As such, with today's level of choice, Green Forest. This level is epic. It has phenomenal setup. After having a small fight with Shadow where they each call each other out for being a liar pants on fire, the two overhear that the entirety of Prison Island is going to explode. Sonic has to escape the island and find his friends in 8 minutes before he and everybody else dies. So yeah, the stakes are pretty high. Aesthetics are a major improvement, as it's not only an actual grass level instead of being a beach level with a footnote, it goes all out on the biome type. Oversized plants and trees, rails being replaced with giant vines, running inside the cut half of a tree stalk, scaling the top of the tree by climbing up the tiny platforms growing out of it. It's a blast visually that balances realism and surrealism perfectly. And the music being high octane and electric, telling you to get to move on before the island explodes. S tier, nuff said. Level design has also seen a major improvement, as it feels like they focused on the elements of SA1's level design and made it more focused, similar to what Sonic 2 did with Sonic 1. Spectacle is much more creative, less control grabbing, and even lets you skip some of it if you master Sonic's controls. It also has a lot more split-second decisions and ways to do stylish tricks to get a higher score bonus, and don't even get me started on the flow you can achieve with a skilled run. Overall, it's a lot more high-octane, focused, and super fun. S tier. And finally, we have original mechanics again, with the large vines that both serve as rails and pulleys, and the giant time limit in the far corner, always reminding you that your time in the stage is limited. A rank. Overall, this is our second X rank. It's not as perfect as Angel Island, but coming into our second foray into 3D, it's still extremely positive. I've made enough jokes at this game's expense, you already know I hate it. Seaside Hill is our third Green Hill clone for today, and it somehow manages to be the best version of the stage, but also an incredibly good level. Am I going crazy? In terms of aesthetics, there's no negatives I have. One thing I'll always credit Heroes for, even if I dislike it, is that the art style and the music are phenomenal. It truly feels like the first game to take from the surrealist and cartoony design of the classics and puts it into 3D, and this level shows it off really well. It's so vibrant and gorgeous, but still down to earth and grounded. I love how they blended in the white and red ruins with the green and orange colors of the grass. The music is also energetic, but on the same level as Green Forest, having an upbeat and energetic beat worthy of a first level. S rank. And even in the level design, these two levels are actually pretty good. Man, am I going crazy? I can't believe I'm saying that about Heroes level design, but here we are. It's not perfect, but it avoids most of the flaws of Heroes levels by having very little enemy interactions or terribly designed puzzles. It's focused on going fast with decent 3D platforming, team mechanics, and interaction with solid spectacle with the large loops and go-karts. A tier. And in terms of original mechanics, this is our first X tier. Man, I'm being really positive. I need to get checked out. There's so many unique ideas with the team go-karts, platforms where you ride on turtles and choose your own path depending on the team member, and giant rocks that chase you down at the end of Ocean Palace. It's incredibly memorable and surprisingly fun. Seaside Hill is a small nugget of Sonic Heroes that proves it had some good ideas and decent execution. And even as someone who hates the game, I still enjoy these tuned stages every time I come back to the game. S tier. Hey Vsauce, Michael here. What if we had Vector meet his drunk uncle? Frog Force is another one of the better levels of Sonic Heroes, not as good as Seaside Hill or Ocean Palace, but still a cut above the rest. In terms of aesthetics, it takes the idea of Green Forest and adds some creativity to the mix. You truly feel small in comparison to the size of everything else in the level, giving off the feeling of being lost in an actual forest. Frog Forest focuses more on the upper parts of the level, showcasing more of the heights of the forest's growth, while Lost Jungle is very low covered by water, giving off a feeling of precociousness and danger. Another S tier. In terms of level design, Frog Forest is actually pretty good. Like Seaside Hill, there's very little forced combat and a greater emphasis on platforming and using your team effectively. The mechanics and physics can suck sometimes, but most of the time I don't really have that much of a problem. Lost Jungle is fine, however. Barely memorable outside of the giant alligator trying to eat you, but outside of that, it's B tier. Coming into the mechanics, it's another X tier. Having to use frogs in different colors to control the weather, using vines as pulleys and, again, the alligator, show that this game is really good with its creativity. In the end, it gets an A tier. Not as good as Seaside Hill, but it's, on its own, a fine level. Good old Sonic 06. Almost 20 years later, and it's still funny when we make fun of you. Kingdom Valley is our designated grass level, but like Emerald Coast, it's really an asterisk in comparison to the old castle biome the level is going for. But for the sake of this video, it counts. Aesthetics are confusing, as it can both look really stunning, but most of the time it just looks really boring. We've shifted almost entirely into the realism department. I mean, just look at Eggman. Ugh. So most of the surrealist and cartoony energy that balanced out the realism previously is almost entirely gone. Not saying that they don't try, I mean I like the wind rails and the bridge surrounded by water is still breathtaking, but overall the level is visually lacking imagination. The music is also lacking that energy. While it's a good atmospheric track with 4 cuts and still has that guitar in the background, I think it cuts it a bit too far back in comparison to stages like Crisis City or Wave Ocean. Also, if you're asking why I'm not covering Wave Ocean, it's literally just Emerald Coast again. So in the end, the graphics get a B tier. If there's one thing I'll give credit to 06 for, is that its level design is some of the best in the series, and Kingdom Valley is proof of that. It feels like it takes more of the open level concepts from Sonic Adventure and runs with it. The first act of Kingdom Valley is chock full of pathways, secrets, shortcuts, and ways to get most out of your time on the stage. There's paths where you run on walls, ride on eagles, use wind rails, and so much more. The second act has you swapping to Silver, and while it's much more linear, it still has creative uses of your moveset, with use of your telekinesis to break pillars and destroying giant robots. It then shifts back to Sonic for the third, mostly linear act. It has some cool moments, but most of it is relegated to cheap spectacle. And finally, we have the Mach Speed section, and oh boy, is it one hell of a set piece. If you somehow manage to wrangle Sonic's terrible Mach Speed controls, you're greeted to a gorgeous castle section inside of a waterfall with a visible rainbow, jumping between platforms and running on water like you're Jesus. If it wasn't hinted at, Kingdom Valley is an X-tier stage. As for this level's mechanics, it's packed densely with them. The wind rails, the bouncy vines you jump on multiple times for height, Silver's telekinesis in general, and the Mach Speed section at the end. My only issue is that most of these aren't fun, mainly due to 06's terrible controls, so I'll be chalking off points and leaving this with a B rank. In short, Kingdom Valley ends up with an A rank. If you're playing PL6, it gets an S rank though. The stage that broke PS3s and Xbox 360s all across the world. Our next tier is Adabat Dave from Sonic Unleashed, one of my favorite stages in the game, and that sentiment is shared by a lot of people. Why is that exactly? In terms of aesthetics, oh my goodness, this level is gorgeous. Even over 16 years later, which is a scary thought to think about, this level holds up magnificently. The biomes are beautiful, lighting is incredibly impressive, especially compared to 06 on the same console. Detail and foliage are really high quality, and the art direction overall is incredibly striking, using realism in a really creative way, though it sadly does lack a lot of imagination seen in the previous games. But still, boosting over the sea, dodging falling towers and rubble is still to this day some of the greatest eye candy the series has ever seen. S tier. But if you've seen a pattern in this video, eye candy can only take you so far if the level itself is weak, which in this case it certainly isn't. It takes every element of boost gameplay you've learned in the previous levels and tests your skill on all of them. Drifting, quick stepping, light speed dashing, sliding, wall jumping, all at blistering speeds, requiring you to have lightning fast reaction time. The level is massive too, with so many sections and set pieces. My only issue is that at times it gets pretty linear, repeats a lot of moments like the quick stepping sections with the robots, but still doesn't really matter. X tier. Now we come to mechanics, and this is where I sadly have to critique the stage, as in terms of original mechanics there's shockingly little. Most of the time the level tests your skill on mechanics you've seen previously, which is fine, but outside of running on water and some bosses pushing you off the stage, there's nothing really here that's unique, so sadly you're getting a B tier. Overall, Jungle Joyride caps off our list with a clean S rank. I so wish I could put it in X, but alas, my judgment must be fair. I don't have a good segue for Planet Wisp, so man, Green Hill's looking a lot more like Wisp Hill right about now. Planet Wisp is in a bit of a conundrum, since unlike stages like Angel Island or Green Forest, this level has 6 acts and neither of them are consistent to each other. Some stages are really good, and some others are Planet Wisp Act 3. I'll try to combine my general thoughts on every level, but know that I can't really have a normal ranking like the others. The aesthetics for this level bring a divine light into my soul. The peaceful, naturalistic, and otherworldly vibe the natural parts of this level give, being contrasted with the hard machinery and technological theme over it, brings the environmentalist ideas from the earlier games and allows it to achieve its true form. It's simply on another level, and this is on the Wii. I really like the color usage. The green yet teal shaded colors of the grass mixed with the ruby red colors of Eggman's constructions come together really well in my opinion, and the serene music, especially the funky Act 3 track. Overall, X tier. But moving over to the level design, it's complicated. Acts 1 and 6 are easily the best acts in terms of both originality and design. What the stage and really colors lacks in 3D, it makes up for with really fun platforming and creative wisp usage. I really like the climb in Act 6 where you can go faster using the hover and spike wisps. On the other hand, we have the other levels, in which case, they're fine. A concept with colors is that half the acts in a zone are basically used as padding, reusing level design seen in previous acts with really boring platforming. Act Act 3 is especially guilty of this, basically reusing the entirety of Act 1's ending without much differentiation. So overall, I'll give it a B. Mechanics are iffy because Colors relies on the Wisp for most of its challenges, so I'll make this easy on myself by ranking the Wisps introduced in this zone. And while there's only one, it's easily my favorite, being the Spike Wisp, allowing you to use a spin dash bot on any surface you want. It, a lot like my other favorite Wisp, Laser, allows you to keep your momentum while still dealing damage to enemies, and opens up a lot of sections for exploration and shortcuts, so in this department it gets an S. So in the end, Planet Wisp has a total of an S rank. Really solid level in a really solid game. Windy Hill is just Green Hill with windmills. B tier because I like the music. Yeesh, and I thought Planet Wisp was inconsistent. Sonic Lost World is a pretty weird game, but I'm a pretty weird person, so I've actually grown a liking to it. When it's focusing on the 3D stages and not some weird gimmick, it's actually a pretty fun time. But when it tries to be overly zany and wacky, it sadly gets pretty messy, and Silent Forest is a perfect example of that. I can't even rank it on any categories generally because every level looks and plays completely different to one another, so let me run this down quickly level by level. Act 1 is an incredibly visually striking level with solid music. The level is solid but very rail heavy and with little places to use your moveset. In terms of mechanics, I like the flower platforms, but overall it's a B tier level. Act 2 is basically the same but with less grass and vines. Good music, but the level is actually incredible. Having to dodge this giant owl from looking at you, but if you're fast enough you can outrun him and keep a great flow. S tier. Act 3 is a tube level with ice physics. D. Act 4 is pretty decent, taking place in a giant temple with an alright shadow gimmick. C tier. Overall, Silent Forest gets a B tier for being incredibly confusing. It's so nice to know that Sega finally hired this man. Sonic Frontiers video game. What hasn't been said about it? Well, if it's ranking the places with the best grass, Gina beat me to it. I'm bundling Kronos, Rhea, and Ouranos together, as they were all originally one island, look basically identical, and guys, I'm tired enough writing this script, okay? Art style-wise, yeah, it's pretty rough. It's the classic talking point everybody's heard before. It's a basic grassy field with some decent monuments, chalked to the brim with rails and dash pads. You might have heard this before, but admittedly, it can still look pretty good. The rails might look all ugly in the sky and it might lack any creativity whatsoever, but when the lighting hits just right at sunset, you look over the horizon and see the grassy fields begin to darken, it all just clicks. The music is absolutely phenomenal. I would have given it an X if I could, but in fairness, it still chalks up to a B tier. The level design is passable. Most of the challenges involve going on a rail, doing a couple of homing attacks, going through some rainbow rings, and that's it. Kronos and Ouranos are chock full of these, but Rhea actually has some pretty good level design, condensing it into 6 towers that focus on different challenges, with less focus on automation. I actually really enjoy these towers, and they contain some of the best platforming in the game, but it's still considerably weak. But Ouranos has a bit of a dilemma, as in the final horizon you're given a refreshed version of Ouranos, and it is my favorite island by far. The platforming is almost entirely based on skill, having to use the multiple characters' movesets effectively to get through it. They're barely automated too, keeping the control right in your hands, and the towers Sonic has to go through are some of the best platforming sections in the series. That's right, I said it, y'all just have a skill issue. So in the end, I'll give it an A. I would have given it a B, but I like Final Horizon way too much. Mechanics, not even gonna waste your time, you'll find nothing here. D tier. Frontiers gets a B in the end, and while I love it, the shortcomings it faces are pretty hard to ignore. I'm going to be making this quick since there's very little I want to say. Aesthetics-wise, it's Blue-Green Hill with some pretty fire music. Level design-wise, it's Blue-Green Hill, but with some cool ramps and a cool loop at the end of Act 2. Mechanics-wise, it's Blue-Green Hill, but did I mention the cool ramps? A rank. Slightly more original than Emerald Hill, but it's still just a clone. Our final level on this list is Speed Jungle, and they at least tried to be more original with this level. Aesthetics-wise, it feels like Angel Island, but with more foresty elements and without the arson. I love the old mechanical elements with grass and vines growing over them. It actually brings up a theory of if there was another technological influence on the North Star Islands before Eggman. We even see small houses which turn out to be the houses for the Sun Gazers, Trip's race. While it does border on being generic, it's still a solid looking level, and the music slaps too for all acts. A tier. I've covered the level in my Superstars review, but to keep it simple, it provides a lot of paths with a lot of interesting stuff to do. The rail grinding is super fun, especially when you jump off a rail and preserve your momentum. Act 2's light gimmick is pretty tedious, but seconds where you need to use it go by pretty simple, and Act Sonic's Fang fight is pretty cool, being sort of a boss fight where you dodge fans' attacks and do some fast platforming. Overall, the level gets an S rank. Level mechanics are also solid too, with the vines allowing you to shoot yourself in the sky, the rails that are really fun to use, and the weird light mechanic. Overall, it gets an A rank in this department. In the end, Sweet Jungle gets an A rank and a solid final pick. And that's the end of the list. We've covered a lot of grass levels and given a lot of ranks, so which one is the best? In my opinion, it has to be Angel Island. It has a lot of interesting mechanics, the level is gorgeous, it understands Sonic level design to a T. It's in my eyes a staple of Sonic grass levels. But which is your favorite? Leave it down in the comments below, but that's all for me. Once more, thank you so much for 400 subs, and Hipster out.